All right. Who here has wondered what happened to the 12 disciples of Jesus?
I have.
It's a good thing you've wondered that, because that is today's lesson. We are going to learn about what happened to them. Now, most of them, it doesn't say in the Bible what happened. As a matter of fact, the only person in the Bible who it says what happened to him is the disciple named James. But all the rest, we have church historians who have written down what happened, legends, and stories that people have told to explain what happened to the church fathers. So we're going to start off. We're going to do this in the order that they are commonly listed in the Bible when you have a list of the 12 disciples. So first off comes Peter. Now Peter is universally acknowledged as the leader of the 12 disciples. And Peter spent several years in Jerusalem, which is right here, approximately, helping lead and found the church. Now eventually, and we don't know quite how, he traveled to Rome. Why are you moving the camera like that? Okay, so eventually he traveled to Rome. And there, in about 60-something AD, there was a big fire in Rome. And the Emperor Nero needed to have somebody to blame. Yes, sir.
Can I take a video, pictures?
Yes.
Not really me.
Okay, then you'll have to pause the video. Alright, now the Emperor Nero needed somebody to blame for what happened and why the entire city of Rome burned down. So he said, it's the Christians' fault. The Christians came and they deliberately burned down the city. So, when that happened, Peter was rounded up as part of those persecutions, and he was killed. He was crucified upside down because Peter said he was not worthy to be killed the same way that Jesus was. Now, James is actually the first disciple who died, and he is the only one whose death is mentioned in the Bible. It's mentioned in the book of Acts, about chapter 7, I believe. And so in that, it says that there was a problem in Jerusalem, and Herod Agrippa got mad at what the disciples were saying and what James was saying, probably because they were calling Herod Agrippa out on some things he wasn't supposed to be doing. So he rounded up James, the brother of John, and he had him killed. James died in Jerusalem. He died within 2 years of Jesus. So,
that is very interesting.
Now next,
Alright, I've got a question.
John. What is your question, ma'am?
And then I forget.
Okay.
Exactly when I ask.
Alright, now next up is John. Now John is a unique person because as far as church records go, he didn't die a martyr's death. Instead, what happened is John spent some time in Jerusalem, and then he went to Ephesus, which is vaguely, roughly right there somewhere. Actually, might be over here. So Ephesus is over here, and so he went to Ephesus. He spent some time there as the leader of the church, and while he was there, he angered the leader of the town, and they tried to kill him. And so they put him in a pot of boiling oil.
Ow.
Exactly. But he didn't die. Instead, he lived. Now, some more time passed, and John was exiled to the island of Patmos. And while he was there, we think that he wrote the letters of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John to the different churches to help try and fight some of the heresies that were coming up. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. One question that I remember.
Okay.
We can't see them. Could you, show us up close?
So, John, while he was at Patmos, wrote 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. You want me to move the disciple up way close? This is John.
Drake.
Drake.
I want to see him too.
But I was doing one at a time.
And, Mom, I just remembered. If I was put in a pot of boiling water, I'd be screaming.
I'm betting that he probably was too. So John wrote the books of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and then that still didn't solve the problem that everyone was having and everyone was disagreeing about, so he wrote the Gospel of John. And then while he was in Patmos, God gave him a vision. He wrote the book of Revelation while he was there. Now, the book of Revelation is the only book of prophecy in the New Testament, and that has not come true as far as we know. Yes, ma'am?
Okay. So, usually I've only pictured John with a beard because,
Do you picture him as an old man?
No, I picture him with a beard because in all of the shows I've watched, he has a beard.
I drew him with no beard because when John was called by Jesus, he was the youngest disciple, so I kind of did that as a way to differentiate that John was younger. All right, now this next one is Andrew, and he is Simon Peter's brother.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Andrew, first off, he started out as a disciple of John the Baptist. And then John the Baptist said, go follow Jesus. And Andrew became the first evangelist because he went over and he grabbed his brother Peter and he said, hey, Peter, let's go follow this guy named Jesus. Now, after Jesus died...
Ow. In your hand. You're going to stick your elbow in my...
You need to sit still. Right. After Jesus died, Andrew went to Greece. And he preached there for many years until eventually he was crucified upside down.
Ow.
Like his brother. Yes.
Why do people keep on being crucified upside down?
Well, because many of them say, I am not worthy to die the same way that Jesus died. And so therefore, they choose to be crucified upside down, which is even more painful.
Why?
All right.
I've got a question. Why is it more painful?
For hanging.
Because all the blood rushes to your head. Now, the plus side is you die faster, but it's quite excruciating. All right, so the next person here is Philip. And Philip was also one of the first evangelists.
Okay.
In the very first story we hear about him, Philip goes and grabs his friend Bartholomew and says, hey, you gotta come meet this guy I just met. He knows everything. And then later, in the last week of Jesus' ministry, Philip helped some Jews, some Greek-speaking Jews, come and meet Jesus. Now, after Jesus died, where do you think Philip might have traveled to?
I have no idea.
No idea? Well,
no idea.
Rome.
No. Like Andrew and John,
Greece.
Philip ended up in Greece.
It's always Greece.
Greece is a popular place.
So that's why.
Now, there's a lot of different stories about what happened to him. Nobody knows for sure exactly which one, but pretty much every single story agrees that he was martyred. And that he was killed for what he believed in. Now, remember how Philip told his friend Bartholomew all about Jesus? Well, here's Bartholomew.
I'm going to get him so well.
And Bartholomew took everything he'd learned about Jesus, and he went to a different continent that no one had gone to yet. Or no one I've talked about has gone to yet. Bartholomew went to India. And he took a copy of Matthew's Gospel, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, and he preached all over India. Now, unfortunately, he was crucified for proclaiming the Gospel in India. Now,
I'm a kid. The camera goes all over the place.
Next up is Matthew. And Matthew wrote the Gospel of Matthew.
Why did you show it to him first? That's what you did last time.
Because I'm not keeping a completely accurate count of who I show it to first.
Actually,
Now, Matthew wrote the Gospel of Matthew, and he wrote it to the Jews to show them that Jesus is the Messiah that God had promised. So, because he thought it was so important that everyone understand who Jesus was, he spent 15 years preaching in Israel. And he also went to Macedonia, which is the area right above Greece. And he went to Persia, which is this area up here. And he went down to Ethiopia. That area there. Yes, ma'am.
That means he's been there longer than I've been born.
Yes. Now,
Oh, gift.
Matthew is one that everyone disagrees how he died. There's some people who say he died of old age. But most of the stories say he died a martyr's death. Please stop playing with the tape. Now this next one is somebody who's very famous in a lot of the Bible stories. Nope. He's all in the Gospels. We don't hear about him beyond the Gospels. Timothy is in Acts. And he gets 2 letters written to him. This is Thomas. Now Thomas is a fun guy. What is Thomas famous for?
Denying.
Not denying.
That's Peter.
That's Peter. Thomas is famous.
No, denying that God lived again.
He's famous for doubting it. He didn't deny it. He just said, I'm not going to believe it until I literally see Jesus. But the story that's more impressive is before Jesus died. Jesus said, okay, it's time to go to Jerusalem. And everyone else, all of the other disciples were saying, Jesus, it's a really bad idea. They want to kill us there. And I kind of like living. But Thomas said, all right, Jesus, I'll follow you. Let's all go to Jerusalem and die together. So, I know, he's kind of a funny guy. So, Thomas, once he saw Jesus, he believed so much that he traveled from Jerusalem all the way over here, crossed some mountains, and he got to India. There are a lot of stories in India about Thomas preaching about Jesus. And it's actually believed he made it almost all the way to the end of India, where eventually he was killed by spears. They threw 4 spears at him and he died. Yes, ma'am?
My neck hurts.
Your neck hurts? I am sorry that your neck hurts.
This is a painful experience.
Okay, thank you for letting us know that. Alright, this
You're
next
welcome.
person is
Paul.
James.
Oh, darn it.
Is Paul one of Jesus' original 12 disciples?
He's an apostle.
No.
No.
But I thought you were going to have him out.
You're going to have to wait and see. Alright, this is James. Now James does not... I am alternating, girl. Now James isn't talked about much in the Bible. Basically, he gets his name mentioned, you know, he might speak up every now and then, but he doesn't really do much. Yes, sir. I think you're just stretching your arm. Okay, so James is moving around. He goes around Judea, which is down here. He goes up into Samaria. Now, eventually, James travels to Egypt, where he gets martyred.
That's not happy.
These are not
Good stories.
going to end up with a lot of happy stories.
Happy
All right,
story.
Now, this is Thaddeus.
Why? We want more beer.
He's got a scruffy beard. Just need a little whiskers.
There.
All right.
I didn't
Thaddeus.
see him. So I have to...
We want.
Right. Thaddeus is also called Jude or Judas.
Ow.
Thaddeus is usually considered to be his nickname. Now, one reason why he might have it, who else had the name Judas? Yes, sir.
One of his disciples, he was one of the people in the Old Testament.
Yes. What else?
He was also Judas Iscariot.
Judas Iscariot had that same name, and Judas Iscariot betrayed Jesus. So I kind of wonder if he might have started really going by the name Thaddeus after what Judas Iscariot did. And he's like, no, I'm not that Judas. I'm Thaddeus. But we don't know for sure because the Bible doesn't say. So Thaddeus went to Armenia, and I forgot to look up where Armenia is. I believe it is roughly up here somewhere.
Please say we're done with this video.
Alright, so Thaddeus went to Armenia, and he preached there for a while, and eventually he too was martyred.
We got 3 more people.
Alright, now this guy is called Simon.
Where?
Alright, and he is called Simon the Zealot. Now, we don't know why he's called Simon the Zealot. There's 2 different possibilities. One, because the term zealot means somebody who's really passionate and excited about something. So he could be really passionate and excited about Jesus. Now, the other possibility is that at the same time there was a political group called the Zealots who wanted Rome out of Israel. So it's a possibility that Simon was a zealot. We don't know for sure. Now, Simon went down to Egypt for a while after Jesus died, and then he traveled back up to Persia. And while he was in Persia, he was challenged to sacrifice to the Persian gods. And he said no. Can you think of somebody else who refused to worship Persian gods?
No.
Daniel.
Daniel. Now, what happened to Daniel when he refused to worship the Persian gods? Yes?
He got killed. Thrown in the lion's den.
He was thrown in the lion's den one time, and another time his friends were thrown in a fiery furnace. Now,
You've got to get out of the fiery furnace.
God did not rescue Simon. And unfortunately, Simon was martyred because of what he believed. Because he refused to go. Now, this next person
My neck hurts.
is one of the last 2. This guy here, named Judas. Judas Iscariot. And he too was chosen as a disciple. Now, Jesus knew when he chose Judas as his disciple that Judas was going to betray him. But he also knew that it was necessary for God's plan to happen. So, after Judas betrayed Jesus to the Jews, he couldn't live with what he had done. He knew that Jesus was innocent and he had not done any of the things that Jesus was being accused of. So, he killed himself. Now, after Jesus died and was resurrected, and while the disciples were waiting for the Holy Spirit to come, they went. Jesus set a precedent. He chose 12 people to be his disciples. That means that we need to have 12 apostles. So they went, we're going to choose a new person to be an apostle. And they went, like, our criteria is it has to be someone who saw Jesus and knew him. It had to be somebody who was with us. And it has to be somebody who's still a believer. So they did that, and they came up with about 4 or 5 people, and then they cast lots. What that means is it's kind of like they rolled dice, and they chose Matthias. And this is the only time that Matthias is mentioned in the New Testament. Now, there's a lot of disagreement about what happened to Matthias, and I'm not going to put him up here. But some say he died in Jerusalem. Maybe he was killed for being a Christian. Maybe he was in Jerusalem when it fell in 70 A.D. Some say he went to Ethiopia. And while he was in Ethiopia, he was martyred. And others say he died of old age. Now, some people think that Matthias wasn't actually the person that God intended to be the replacement. Some people think that Matthias was just a placeholder. Now, there's one theory that basically this new person who I'm about to mention was an apostle after Matthias' death. It was always there was 12. It wasn't that there became a 13th apostle. Who do you think this person could be that I'm talking about? Paul. Okay, so Paul. Paul was a very busy person. So Paul starts out here in Jerusalem, and then he goes up. He gets his vision from God on the way up to Damascus. and then spends some time out in the wilderness of Israel, learning and talking with God. So he comes back, goes to Jerusalem, goes back up to his church, and from there he gets sent out, and he goes all over the Mediterranean Ocean. I mean, he goes to Cyprus, he goes to Greece, he goes all over. Now, eventually, actually, this is Greece. There's Italy. All right, so eventually, though, Paul heads back to Jerusalem. And what happened when he was in Jerusalem?
I don't know.
Yes, sir.
He was thrown in jail and flogged.
He was thrown in jail and flogged. And after a couple of years of talking with the leaders, he said, what?
I appeal to Caesar.
I appeal to Caesar. So he headed off to Rome, jumped on a boat, got shipwrecked right about here, spent a couple of days.
Got bit by a snake.
Months there, got bit by a snake, and eventually he makes it over to Rome. Now, this is important. He now spends 2 years in jail in Rome. And eventually, roughly the same time that Peter was crucified upside down, Paul gets his day before Nero. This is the same time that Nero is going through and killing all the Christians. As many as he can get a hold of. Now, what's special about Paul as compared to all the other
He's a Roman
disciples?
citizen.
He is a Roman citizen, as has been stated by people who called out. Can Roman citizens, what's great about being a Roman citizen? Yes.
You have to have a trial.
You have to have a trial. What else? Yes, you
can't be flogged.
can't be flogged without a trial. What else? Yes?
Can't be crucified.
You can't be crucified. Because crucifixion is saved for the lowest of the low. It is not for a Roman citizen who is obviously better than everyone else. That's what the Romans believed.
No, there's going to be 3 videos of this.
Okay. Well, so Paul is taken outside of the city gates and he is beheaded. And so it's a relatively painless death, but still, that is what happened to him. So, that is what happened to the 12 disciples of Jesus.
That is not a very happy ending of any of them.
No. The only one that we're pretty sure about, we're like 99% sure died of old age, is John. With the possibility of Matthew. Alright. The end.
Yay.
Stop the video?
I might have
Bye
some
bye
videos.
bye bye
I
bye
just
bye
got videos.
bye
I
bye
kept
bye bye
pressing
bye
the
bye bye
That's okay.
bye 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 bye
It's not on video.
bye
I know,
bye.